What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to some more r/OlderThanYouThinkIAm stories. Let's get into it. You shouldn't bring kids in here. A few weeks ago, I, 23-year-old female, had a break from my uni classes, so I went back home to stay at my mum's place for a few days. She needed to do some shopping, and since she had a bad back, I went with her to help carry the heavier stuff. The supermarket we shop at has two distinct sections. The main area where all the groceries are, and then a smaller area off to the side that exclusively sells alcohol. They're separated by a wall. After we finished paying for our main groceries, Mum decided she wanted to get herself a bottle of wine for later, so we headed over into the alcohol section. This happened in Australia, and the legal drinking age is 18 here, so I'm definitely old enough to be in this section of the store. But I noticed that the guy at the counter was giving us a weird look. It was making me a little uncomfortable, but I ignored it and Mum picked out what she wanted to buy. We headed over to the counter. The guy scans the bottle and then just looks at us for a second with a somewhat confused look on his face. Then he turns to me and asks to see my ID. I kinda expected that because 23 isn't all that much older than 18, so I figured he was just double checking that I was old enough. Before I could get my ID out though, Mum got annoyed and interrupted. My memory of what exactly was said may be a little fuzzy, but this is what I remember. My mum said, "Why do you need her ID? I'm buying this." "Yes, but if you're buying it for her, she needs to be 18. "It's not for her though, I'm getting this for me." "I can't sell it to her unless she's not buying it, I'm buying it." The conversation went back and forth for a minute or two, and it became clear that the guy thought I was just some teenager who bought an adult to buy alcohol for me. He didn't actually expect me to have any ID with me. No wonder he was giving us a weird look when we walked in, and my mum being stubborn probably wasn't helping. Yeah, probably not. Mum just handed him the money, saying in a slightly irritated tone, "It's not for her, are you gonna let me buy it or not?" And the guy just glared at her and snapped back. "Even if that's true, you still shouldn't be bringing kids in here. She's not old enough to..." I was getting uncomfortable, so I cut in. "But I'm not a kid, I'm 23. He paused and just looked at me for a moment, then again asked to see ID. He looked at it and handed it back without a word. He didn't say much after that, just the standard checkout stuff. It was mostly just awkward silence for the rest of the transaction. I feel kinda bad about it, but at least it made the shopping trip interesting. I'm used to having people think I'm 2 to 3 years younger than I actually am. Usually I use that to convince salespeople that I'm too young to sign up to their subscriptions, so they'll leave me alone. But this is the first time in a while that anybody has called me a kid. You know, I don't know about this story. I feel like this guy was just doing his job. In the UK, we've got a regulation that if someone looks under 25, you need to be prepared to show ID. Think about it. It is tough for workers. How do they really know your age without asking for your ID if you look young? However, if you are a mum and you go to a store with your kid, you have to be allowed to buy alcohol even if they look under the age. But then again, I think your mum was a little too sharp here. She should have just let you give your ID over. Moving on to the next story. That's good, little girl. I'm surprised to hear you like veggies. I'm a male, 18-year-old second-year undergrad student. For context, the haze situation in Malaysia was extremely bad over the past week. On that day this happened, API 270+, haze entering indoors as well, and I had to wear an N95 mask. On top of that, I was wearing a pink hoodie with the hoodie over my head. It was tightly tied up, so it kinda looked like I was wearing a tudung or a hijab. I'm not even Muslim though, or a girl. I had and still have a sore throat, resulting in a higher pitched voice than usual. A few days back, I was ordering food at a cafe, and since I'm vegetarian, I ordered vegetarian fried rice. The cashier was an older lady, probably in her 60s, and my statement to which she replied, "Oh, that's good, little girl. I'm surprised to hear you like veggies. Oh, and girl, you know this place is non-halal, right?" I took off my mask and hoodie, started explaining to her that I'm an 18-year-old Malaysian Chinese dude and Buddhist and not Muslim, and she just started apologizing. It turns out she thought I was a 12-year-old Muslim Malaysian girl. Wow, so age, gender, religion, and race, not every day do you see someone getting 4 out of 4 wrong. That is incredible. Yeah, you made it hard for her with the hood, the haze, you know, the color of the sweater even, but 4 out of 4, fair play. Moving on to our third story, I'm the Professor Romeo. Not my story, but my wife's. My wife is a lawyer, and before we met, she taught commercial law at a city university. She was in her late 20s when this happened, over 20 years ago, and in Latin America. In fairness, she had a baby face and looked considerably younger than she was. In fact, when we first met, I tempered my initial "wow, hot chick" reaction because I thought she might be too young. First day of a new term, and she sets off for her first assigned evening class, carrying the distinctive coloured grade/roster book that all the instructors were issued. She'd never taught in that wing before, and as she approached the room, there were a couple of students hanging out near the door that made it difficult to see the room number. So as she approached, she asked, "Is this commercial law 100? One young Lothario instantly volunteered his help. "Yes, it is. Wow, what's a pretty girl like you need to study commercial law for, huh? Tell you what, you come in, sit by me. I'll make sure I help you take all the notes you need. We can study together. This is a very difficult subject. You're going to need all the help you can get. And this teacher is supposed to be a very tough grader, but don't worry, you sit by me and you'll do fine." She stared at him for a moment, she tells me, and then just opened her right arm up to reveal the grade/roster book she was carrying and said, "I think I'll sit up front, thanks," and walked in, hearing his friends start to bust his balls for hitting on the teacher. Apparently, his promises of scholastic aptitude were exaggerated. He barely passed. Oh my goodness me, imagine trying to show off in front of your friends and then being hit with this. Jeez, I actually feel bad for this guy. What a great comeback by your wife as well though, just putting him in this place before the term and semester even starts. Unreal. See, this is the sort of story that I wish I could have seen in the flesh. It would have been unbelievable. Moving on to our fourth story, I'm not the bride, she is my mum. So a few years ago, I got married to my wonderful husband who was 7 years older than me and very much looks his age. I do not. I have countless stories that would fit this sub, but this one is a twofer. I look young, and it's genetic because my mum does as well. We both look roughly a decade younger than what our actual age is, which often causes confusion as I'm sure you can guess. Anyway, my husband and I decided to get married in a small town with very few options for vendors. So we went to the restaurant that would be catering our wedding to taste their options and decide what we wanted. My mum came too. As the chef is bringing out dishes, he is looking at my mother while he explains everything. I think nothing of it because she's pretty and about his age and outgoing, and I'm so shy that I tend to give out "don't talk to me" vibes. Also, after 25 years of going out to eat with my mum, it's almost a natural habit to expect any questions to go to her. So we taste the food and my husband and I start narrowing down what we want. Eventually, the chef comes back with his notebook and sits down so we can tell him our choices. He directs all of his questions at my mother, but I hear them and it's my wedding, so I answer them. The chef looks hella confused. He looks at me, looks at my fiance, looks at my mum, and gestures with his pen like he doesn't understand what's going on. "I'm not the bride," my mum said. "She is. I'm her mum." Then the chef looks at my fiance like he's a pedophile. "I'm 25, I said. He's 32. She's in her mid-40s. "Right," the guy nods, clearly still confused. He's flustered but finishes taking our order for the wedding and we leave. My mum and I still laugh about it, especially since she is very much a stereotypical looking Gen X mum type. And my husband and I are both covered in tattoos and heavily pierced. Why the guy would think that they were together just based on their clothes and style is something we still haven't solved. Well, to be honest, I'd say to OP that this is probably a very nice issue to have. If you're way younger than you look, you're doing well in life. Fair play. Now for our final story. This is an apartment for college students. Back in September last year, with the midterm elections coming up, I started noticing a lot of people standing with signs and pamphlets by my college, reminding people about the importance of voting. I live in a neighborhood just slightly out of the main college town area, so there are a few families with young children in the neighborhood. However, this neighborhood is still widely considered part of the college town. Maybe about 70 to 80% of my particular street are college-aged adults. It's pretty obvious the way most of these homes have giant "we love our students, we love insert college name here." If you canvass the area, you'd first expect to see college students, then expect to see actual adults with tiny kids because of the nearby elementary school. I'm studying at home because college midterms always seem to fall around election times. I always vote by mail because of this. I'm also an out-of-state student and prefer to vote in my home state. All is well until I hear a knock at the front door. I used to live in some shadier areas as a kid, so I never opened the door before asking who's on the other decide and what do they want? A guy responds letting me know he's going door to door about voter registration. I used to volunteer for the same job back in my home state, and I knew firsthand how defeating it can be when people ignore your desperate pleas to please vote. So I opened the door for the guy to give his spiel. Hi, are your parents home? I guess he must have assumed I was an elementary school kid on account of the elementary school down the block. But like I mentioned earlier, most houses on my particular street have giant signs screaming, "Live by insert college name." Not really knowing how else to reply, I managed to stammer out, "This is an apartment for college students?" The realization dawned on his face that I wasn't 8, but at least a decade older, and we stared at each other awkwardly until I broke it with a "I'll vote by mail" and slammed the door. Oh my goodness me, this might actually be the biggest age gap I've seen on this subreddit, in terms of the difference between someone's actual age and the age that someone else thinks they are. 8 to 18? Wow. Like, we see a lot of, 25 to 35, or, even older, 45 to 50, that sort of age gap. That's not that bad. But 8 to 18, that's insane. When he said, "Hi, are your parents home?" you should have said, "I don't know, why don't you call and ask them?" That would have been unreal. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this episode of Older Than You Think I Am. I really hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, check out another episode from the same subreddit on screen right away. With that being said, don't forget to like this video, comment your opinions down below, and subscribe for 2 videos each and every day on my channel throughout December.